Hello subscribers and non-subscribers, and welcome back to ChäoS. Let's go ahead and continue. If I can find my timer. And start it for 30 minutes. Okay, so I left my PC on and the Sarah in my screensaver radiated pale light and a smile into the rest of the dark room. I locked the door from the inside and flung myself heavily down on the sofa. When I closed my eyes, I couldn't help recalling what had happened today. Of all things, to be suspected by the police. They must be making some kind of mistake. I wasn't even capable of murder. Do a better job of investigating. This isn't a game. They probably thought that because creepy otaku don't have much social knowledge, I wouldn't be able to object even if they set me up as the criminal. Since they had totally failed to find the true perpetrator, they wanted to maintain their reputation by using me as their scapegoat. Damn it! What should I do to clear up their accusations? I shuddered as I remembered the scene at Cafe. There was someone out there far more terrifying than the police. Yua was my enemy. Lately I thought I was safe because she hadn't shown any signs of movement. I'd been ecstatic, thinking she wouldn't attempt to make contact with me anymore. But today, I'd been forced to realize my mistake. I needed a D-sword to resist the likes of her. I cast a glance at the cheap sword leaning up to one side of my PC. It was a fake. According to Ayase, a D-sword was only visible to those with the power. Nanami had clearly seen my sword on the day I bought it. Besides, unlike Ayase and Senna's sword, this one didn't glow. Where could the real thing be? I need to acquire one ASAP. If not, it would be the end of me. There couldn't be anything worse than getting wrapped up in something this unreasonable. You're wrong. That's impossible. There's no way it could be true. But don't they say that multiple personalities are really rare in Japan? You have seen too many movies and novels. I don't have multiple personalities. There's no proof of it anywhere. But that chat log was consistent with what you had told me. But nor was there any proof that he didn't have multiple personalities. But for some reason, Dr. Takashi went away. Keep hitting right mouse button. But I don't understand myself. I was assaulted by a tingling sensation at the back of my neck. The usual presence, the gaze of someone watching me. Whose eyes are those? But did Shogun truly exist? Was not that itself a delusion? Cradling my head, I shouted at no one. The one who replied was... Sarah? I dragged myself over to my PC and checked my email. Grim was the sender. The title was, Found Something Interesting. Must be more of his trolling. He was trying to get my head to shut down again. I couldn't afford to go along with Grimm's games now, but for the time being, I stuck to just reading the text of his mail. You aren't an Ensu either, I couldn't help it, so I mailed you. This vid is like seriously shocking, so take a look. You're probably thinking he's just trying to break my brain again, but it's a film shot by the new gen perp. They're going batshit about it online. In my opinion, you ought to watch it before you get behind the curve. A video taken by the new gen perp? My fingers trembled against the mouse. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the email. Did he mean the criminal showed up in there? Who was it? Surely not me. My desire to see it warred with my longing not to, or I guess warred. This was proof. Proof that I wasn't the criminal, or else proof that I was. I didn't know which would turn out to be the case. It was akin to a gamble. Sensing the ringing of my internal alarm bells, I moved my mouse cursor up to where the link was located. But I couldn't quite work up the courage to click the URL. Shut up! Don't treat me like a criminal. Don't act like you sympathize with me. I didn't do it. You herself was the one on the killer side. Furious, I clicked the URL. A MewTube page opened up. The word loading appeared in the video window. In actuality, it only took about 10 seconds to load, but to me those 10 seconds felt like eternity. At last, the finished loading and the video began playing back. It was a film of a very dark place. The background was pitch black. It looked like somewhere indoors. That doesn't look indoors at all. It was an attempt to somehow gather in an attempt to somehow gather information from within the video window, I brought my face closer to the monitor. It was dim and hard to see, but several girls and guys were there. They were raising their voices, being terribly boisterous. Perhaps because of how low the audio rate was, or perhaps because the emotions of the people in the film were so heightened, I couldn't catch what they were saying. On occasion, they let out violent shouts, their voices breaking horribly. After watching for a little while, I grasped that there were 5 people present, including the cameraman that made 6. The cameraman didn't enter the screen in the slightest. Though I could tell there were 5 people, the darkness prevented me from seeing their faces clearly. As though to affirm one another, they caressed each other's heads, patted each other's shoulders, and embraced. I heard a girl's high-pitched weeping as if she'd been overcome by emotion. It was certainly a singular spectacle, but how was this video related to New Gen? Was the New Gen criminal really the one who had filmed it? At least I had no recollection of taping something like this. After some time, the videographer holding the camera began moving forward. His 5 subjects, who had been about 5 meters away, gradually began to show up larger and larger. The picture was rather grainy. Maybe someone had lowered the bitrate as much as possible when they encoded it so as to make the film smaller. Or the file smaller. Modern video cameras should be night vision capable, so I wasn't sure why this cameraman hadn't taken advantage of that. Was it an old camera, maybe? The camera panned from side to side, revealing the surrounding scenery. What I'd assumed to be a pitch-black background was in fact the night sky. In other words, this place being filmed was outside. The reason not a single building appeared on the tape was because this was the roof of a high-rise. The 5 girls and guys were at the edge of the roof of a very tall building. Close behind them lay a sheer precipice. Below were the lavish lights of Shibuya one could see from tall locations. I finally understood what this video signified, why he'd said it had been taken by the New Gen criminal. The case in which 5 people jumped off the roof of Cornelius Tower, which should have been sealed off like a locked room situation in a detective novel. The first in the sequence of New Gen incidents, the one that could have been either murder or suicide. If this film portrayed the 5 who had jumped to their deaths, then it might have been, then it meant there had been a 6th person on the scene when it happened. The 5 shown here hadn't been acting boisterous. All had sunk down on the spot and were screaming and crying as they pressed their bodies together. Unable to give up, even though they were fated to die soon. One shook his head and sobbed, "No, no!" One fell to her knees and wept with her shoulders heaving. Clutching at her hair, one turned to the cameraman, crying, asking why he was doing something like this. One had already gone mad and was laughing as tears poured down his face. There lay a raging desire to live, a searing longing not to die. Disconsolate anger. Why does this have to happen to us? Many raw emotions forming a downward spiral. In opposition to that, bizarrely, the cameraman's voice never entered the video. This cameraman was uncannily calm. Nothing would change, no matter how much I pleaded with a video that had been filmed almost a month earlier. I mean, you could close the window. I knew it was meaningless, but I found myself unconsciously shouting at the monitor. But there was no way my words would reach them, and the camera drew even closer to the five of them. But the camera's not drawing closer. At least not in the video. The video itself is basically paused, and it's us getting closer and closer. Perhaps driven by fear, they retreated from the camera as though crawling. But escape was impossible. Close behind them was the very edge of the heliport. It had nothing resembling a safety fence. They no longer had anywhere to run. If they scooted back a little further, they'd fall. The cameraman, utterly heedless of how they begged for their lives, continued advancing the camera on them as if he meant to drive them distraught. He had driven them this far into a corner, but he sought to take no other action. Okay. Well, the background noise is finally a little quieter. In fact, it's gone. Though they had neither signaled to each other nor experienced some kind of trigger, the five who had been sobbing in grief suddenly fell silent all at once. They stood up. The wind was strong on the roof of Cornelius Tower. Pushed on by the wind, they seemed about to stumble. One misstep and they would fall. As though they had given up, they joined their hands. They gripped each other's hands firmly. Silence. I almost thought that even the sound of the wildly blowing wind had stopped. All I could hear were the cars running along the Shuto Expressway below the building. The cameraman still did nothing. And one of the five softly muttered. I froze in front of the monitor, feeling as though a cold hand had grabbed hold of my heart. This was the first New-Gen incident, wasn't it? The phrase, "Whose eyes are those?" was supposed to be the dying message from Vampire House, the fourth case. This was crazy. The film continued, ignoring my internal screams. As they held hands, the five slowly stepped forward. Keep hitting right mouse button. Don't mean to. It's just I'm trying to rest my finger. Then I hit it. The five slowly stepped forward as though there were a road ahead of them. They collapsed into the night scenery of the megalopolis. However the hell you pronounce it. Pretty sure that's right. I bit my lip and covered my eyes. The group diving wasn't suicide. This, too, had been a homicide. The criminal had been there when it happened. And I knew. The cameraman. Mixed in with the sound of the powerful wind on the rooftop. Mixed in with the sound of 5 people intentionally weeping. Mixed in with the honking of the cars on the expressway below. I had distinctly heard another, fainter sound. It was a sound like that of metal creaking. The sound I had heard when the cameraman advanced. The sound of a wheelchair. And I kind of screwed that up because I thought he was done talking. Although the pause wasn't that long. I just assumed he was done talking because of the pause. Oh well. Yeah, I'll admit. Camera's line of sight is actually fairly low to the ground.
Shogun.
Nope, I guess we're going into Chapter 5. Naturally, the group diving video became a huge topic of conversation after it started streaming online. As Grimm had told me, the internet was going bonkers over it. Many at 8chan were convinced that all 4 new-gen homicides had been committed by the same murderer. Alright, I put it to, wow, those eyes are... The message of vampire was whose eyes are, etc. That makes a connection between the first and last new-gen cases, even though everyone used to say they weren't related. So we can add in the pregnant man and the stalk and the staking too. Crap, getting way too excited about this. Plus whose eyes, etc. first showed up in Vampire House, so whoever did it couldn't have been intimidating the group diving. Don't look this way, lol. I saw the vid, but doesn't it seem kinda fake? I bet 1 cent that some acting trope did it to get press. Don't overuse the whose eyes phrase or whatever, you twerps. All it'll do is make the perp get even more into it. So, are we like totally sure it's all the same guy now? Like it's actually just 2 meters tall, and they had a landing mat spread out below it. I guess that's in response to the guy who said it was probably an acting trope. Agreed. More people are gonna get killed while you guys keep using those words. Get a hold of yourself, it's not that funny anymore. I live in Shibuya. Don't look this way. The YouTube video is racked up at the top number of views. Whoa, lol, don't look my way. Here it is, the top story on MHK News. No declaration of responsibility from whose eyes, etc. yet. Special program on all the commercial stations, except for Tokyo TV. The TV reports were getting overheated as well. Like 140 had mentioned, all the big channels except Tokyo TV were broadcasting special programs, and they aired the aforementioned video over and over. The special programming itself ended in about an hour, but it was a minor shock for the country when that video got broadcast nationwide. Although all the stations voluntarily censored themselves, cutting off the last scene where the actual jumping took place, it still had an astoundingly powerful impact. The drift of the debate on TV was, by and large, the same as online, and people seemed to have all but decided that the 4 new-gen cases had been committed by the same criminal. Which was natural enough. They'd already discovered common ground between 2 of the new-gen incidents. The phrase currently going around Shibuya. It had originally made its public debut via the 4th new-gen case, Vampire House. Despite that, one of the victims from the group diving, which took place over a month earlier, had let the same words slip. At present, these words were known to have been used in the first and last of the 4 new-gen incidents. What that pointed to was, as everyone thought, the possibility that the 4 incidents had been triggered by the same perpetrator. The police had an emergency press conference where they announced their response by stating that they would move to identify the uploader with all possible speed. Some politicians were also saying things like, "How greatly regrettable. The criminal must be apprehended as soon as possible." The YouTube video was deleted by the site less than 3 hours after it got uploaded, but by then it was too late. 8chaners had long since finished capturing the video and spreading it around by uploading it here and there and everywhere. No one could stop them. And late at night, the following fact was revealed via a police announcement. The video of the group diving incident had been uploaded from the PC in room 37 of a certain manga cafe which was located in the Shibuya area. Seated at my desk, I slumped over and hugged myself. Without my realizing it, I had started eavesdropping. Today, I was oversensitive to the voices of those around me. I listened to all kinds of conversations, but no big surprise there. Everyone was talking about the group dive video from yesterday. There were also girls jokingly saying, "Whose eyes are those?" to each other. I bit my lip and studied the surface of my desk. The video was proof. Proof that Shogun existed. Proof that I hadn't killed anyone. Which meant I didn't have multiple personalities. The old man in the wheelchair was the new gen perpetrator. But for what reason could Shogun have deliberately uploaded that video? Why would he himself do something to hint at his identity when the criminal had previously been swathed in mystery? When I pondered this, I came up with two conclusions. The first one was that Shogun was the attention-seeking type of criminal. The chances of this seemed pretty high, given how he had gone out of his way to show himself to me. As for the other possibility, he was challenging me. For reasons unknown, Shogun, along with his underling Yua, were meddling with me. I didn't know why they felt they needed to do so, but they almost succeeded in setting me up as the new gen criminal. It was possible that the police continued to suspect me even now. Shogun was attempting to entrap me.
僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた。目覚めるんだ。早く。でないと、もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
Thus, Shogun had spoken to me when he showed himself before me. I could only think of it as a form of intimidation, the equivalent of, "I'm going to kill you, so don't run away." And this time, he'd taken the unprecedented action of uploading the video and making sure it was seen throughout Japan. Shogun had undoubtedly moved to the next step of his plan. I had been naive to think that maybe he'd stop targeting me. On the contrary, it would be better to assume that he had at least begun to attack and plot against me in earnest. I was scared. That video had given me the shakes. Despite the fact that Shogun was, physically speaking, under a far worse handicap than me, he had killed 5 high schoolers without lifting a finger. If everything New Gen related had been done by the same person, it meant that Shogun had enacted the brutal pregnant man, staking, and vampire cases with his diminutive body. Or maybe Yua had helped him. Either way, I didn't have any confidence in my ability to protect myself against people capable of carrying out such horrific acts with ease. My fear of them, my rage against the unfairness of my being targeted, and the message of, "Whose eyes are those?" If I weren't careful, I'd start trembling. To suppress that, I would have to keep myself from relaxing for the time being. I constantly paid close heed to my surroundings and braced myself so I could flee if someone seemed to be approaching. I didn't know when Shogun, or else Yua, might suddenly appear before me. For that matter, I had no guarantee that Yua was the only one working under Shogun. Someone connected to Shogun might be among my classmates now, indulging in carefree chatter all around me. I had to do everything in my power to avoid being ambushed like yesterday at Cafe. If not, I'd get killed next time for sure. I had to get a D-sword, fast. Obtaining a D-sword was the only way to break free of my current situation. After listening to ISA and Senna and actually researching it online, I was all but certain of it. I'd be saved if I could get my hands on a D-sword. Yesterday evening, I'd been frantically collecting information on D-swords while I kept an eye on the Frenzy online, but I didn't meet with much success. I cradled my head, digging my fingers through my greasy hair. How the hell was I supposed to become the owner of a D-sword? ISA had told me so, but it was also but it was asking too much to say that without giving me a single hint. I was becoming more and more impatient. Anxiety threatened to make my chest cave in. Hurry. I had to hurry and find a D-sword, no matter what it took, a D-sword. You've got to find it. Everything will be over if you don't find it. I've got to find it before I become the next new gen victim. But how was I supposed to find one? I didn't know of any good methods. Some kind of hint. A hint. I have to rush, or I'll lose my chance to find it. Am I capable of finding it? This wasn't the time to be doing stuff like coming to school. My life and my ability to graduate, there was no need to weigh them against one another. Yet, why was I? Sensing someone's approach, I raised my head in a flash and recoiled. Remy was there, blinking at the suddenness of my movement. I'm the one who was surprised. Don't scare me like that. Relaxed from my tension, I let out a sigh and flopped flat against my desk. As usual, Remy took a peek at my face. Flustered, I lowered my eyes. Was Remy on my side, or was she my enemy? Because she'd saved me once, my wariness toward her had faded considerably. However, on the other hand, I still hadn't resolved these suspicious points about her. What had been going on when I saw her covered in blood at the staking? We were supposed to have been friendly classmates since freshman year, but why was she completely missing from my memory? Remy tilted her head, looking troubled. I looked away from Remy. I couldn't ask her such things to her face. My nerves were utterly frayed by the time today's classes finally came to an end. Even during class, I had ceaselessly and warily surveyed my surroundings, paying no attention to the classes themselves. If I hadn't slept since yesterday, but the sheer tension of it kept me wide awake. School today had felt virtually endless, and its excessive length had sent me into despair time and again. I wondered why one's sense of time could be so drastically affected by one's state of mind. They say time flows at a fixed and constant rate, but maybe that's a lie. Your subjective point of view can change the speed of time. In fact, I had a hard time thinking of people's attempts to affix standalone values to periods of time like seconds and hours as anything but a plot to cover up the differences in subjectively perceived time, and thus make all of humanity recognize it the same way. And supposing the length of time changes based on your subjective perspective, then, if you reversed it, wouldn't that mean that you could actually control its length at will? That occurred to me because of what Senna had said about controlling the free will of others. If you reversed it, huh? If you could change the picture from a video camera to electrical signals and send it into someone's brain, making them see it as a series of images, then the reverse would be changing that which you envision in your head to electrical signals and sending it to a videotaping device, thereby turning it back into an image. In fact, there was no reason that said recording device needed to be a video camera. For example, what would happen if you connected them to a hard disk recorder and showed them recordings of a nature program? What if, instead of a nature program, you showed them an anime? Come to think of it, anime was 2D. It was delusionary. But since a person who had been blind since birth would never actually have witnessed 3D scenery, if he showed them an anime and said, "This is what the world looks like," wouldn't they come to believe that the 2D world itself was reality? That way, the person in question would perceive delusions as being reality, wouldn't they? For example, let's go green. I don't remember what I did last time. We're gonna go green this time. If person A put their imaginary visions into a hard disk recorder and transformed it into image data, then sent it to person B, wouldn't A's delusions turn into B's reality? Delusions turning into reality. Theoretically, it should be possible. Am I some kind of genius? LOL. The magnificence of my idea thrilled me. Perhaps this itself was the way to obtain a D-sword. Hadn't ISA called her D-sword a delusion? Oh, Alright, time to go home and check it out online. I left the classroom and headed for the school exit without a single sidelong glance. However, I didn't forget my custom of walking along the edge of the hallway while hanging my head and doing everything I could to avoid standing out. Since a little time had passed since the ending bell, most people who went straight home were already gone, though students with club activities or cleaning duty remained behind. Somehow, schools gave off a lonely, nostalgic feeling once a day's worth of classes have ended. This is true of both old-fashioned wooden school buildings and newer ones like Suame Academy. Although, to be fair, I'd only been to wood-constructed school buildings in Eroge. As I walked through the corridor filled with slanting afternoon light, pondering that sort of useless stuff, I spotted a peculiar figure coming toward me. A girl was tottering along, carrying 2 huge cardboard boxes. The boxes hid her face from me. She probably couldn't see what was ahead of her either. She couldn't possibly have been more precarious. If I were in an Eroge, a scenario like this would lead to me colliding with her and setting off a flag, guaranteed. I thought about giving it a shot, but it was a mere thought, of course, and I didn't have any intention of actually trying it out. Oh, and timer just went off. I guess we shall go through this delusion first before ending the episode. On the contrary, I stayed on my guard. Chances were strong that she might be an assassin sent to... an assassin... What? No, that doesn't sound right. An assassin sent by Shogun. Don't get involved. Watch out. I paid careful attention to every step she took. She drew closer... She drew still closer to me, swaying first to the right, then to the left. I, on the other hand, walked along the left side of the corridor. I waited until she tilted toward the right, then sped up my pace. By doing so, I managed to pass her safely. Hearing something drop, I cast my gaze downward without a second thought. Someone's student handbook had fallen. Without meaning to, I stopped. Had the cardboard box girl dropped it? I thought hard as I contemplated the student handbook. Doubts rose at the back of my head. Why had it fallen now? With this timing? It was too obvious, almost as if someone were urging me to pick it up. A trap? I wonder if she dropped it on purpose. The cardboard box girl had used both arms to hold up her boxes. Neither of her hands had been free. If her student handbook had been kept in her skirt pocket, it would have been impossible for her to take it out and drop it on purpose. Except, it wasn't as if I actually had seen where the handbook had fallen from in the first place. Maybe the cardboard box girl had been holding it from the start, carrying her cardboard boxes in such a way as to conceal it from me. Nothing was certain. It might not have been deliberate. It might be normal to regard it as a coincidence. I then made my gaze follow the figure of the cardboard box girl, or tried to. Right at that very instant, the cardboard box girl turned a corner and went out of sight. I'd only seen her from behind for a second. I didn't think she looked familiar. I felt like she'd had short hair. No, but she had also seemed long. But it had also seemed long. I couldn't make a decisive statement either way. I hadn't seen her face either, of course. The cardboard boxes had hidden it as we passed one another. All that remained in the hallway were me and the student handbook. Maybe the common sense response would be to pick it up and take it to the faculty room or chase after the cardboard box girl, but I hesitated to do either. I looked around, but didn't see any other students. All I heard were a number of girls laughing merrily from somewhere far off. I didn't think this was a trap. The handbook's owner was already gone. How might this situation end up entrapping me? Could there be a microscopic bomb planted in the handbook? That was far too unrealistic. So surely nothing would happen even if I picked it up here and now. Right, of course nothing was going to happen. I ought to use it to confirm who that girl was, just in case, because she might be working for Shogun. I take a look at her name, class, and headshot and leave the handbook itself back here. I take a pass on shouldering the hassle of having to deliver it to the person in question. After glancing around with even greater caution to make sure no one was in the area, I picked up the student handbook and casually opened it to the first page. I hastily flung it away. What was that? An unidentifiable eeriness. It didn't so much freak me out as it made me feel sick. Malicious and blatant harassment aimed at me as an individual. Who? Who would do such a thing? The girl from before, obviously. That girl had been affiliated with the Shogun, after all. Of course she had. I'd only had a glimpse of the student handbook's contents before, but the first page, which should have contained the owner's name, birth date, class, and other information, had been utterly blacked out. Furthermore, the headshot photo that ought to be pasted there had been ripped away. It made me ill. I abruptly experienced nausea. I wanted to leave this place sooner rather than later. Covering my mouth, I went toward the stairs. By the time I blatantly come out in the courtyard, I couldn't hold back my urge to vomit anymore. The instant I dropped to my knees, the contents of my stomach came rushing up backwards. Surging stomach acid made the depths of my throat sting. Tears blurred my field of sight. It grew hard to breathe. The aftertaste of bile in my mouth made me feel sick. It seemed like I was closer to the end of my psychological rope than I thought. It might also have been because I'd stayed up all night. I looked around carelessly as I wiped the edges of my mouth. No one was there. But the shadows and blind spots I normally wouldn't take notice of seemed dreadful to me now. I began to think that Yua and Shogun might be hiding somewhere. Once I made myself believe it, I lost the ability to take a single step away from this place. Somebody save me. I wanted to cry at the same time. The urge to vomit rose in me yet again. I didn't throw up this time around, but I had dry heaves over and over. It hurt so bad, more and more tears started overflowing. And then someone softly began stroking my back. Frightened, I looked behind me. It was Rimi. Those words weren't a question aimed at me. They were a gentle conclusion. She didn't grimace at the rotten stench of the filth I'd retched up. She didn't show any indication of despising me even when she saw my face covered in tears and nose drippings with vomit stuck to the corners of my mouth. She smiled serenely as though to reassure me. She drew close to my back, lightly stroking my back. She drew close to my side, lightly stroking my back. Why? Before this, and now, when I thought I wanted someone to save me, why did Rimi materialize before my eyes? Because Rimi was here with me now? I felt relief. I felt my burdens lighten. Before I knew it, I'd begun divulging all my emotions, even though I was bad at talking about myself. Maybe this was why I'd come to school. Up until now, I thought I was better off alone. Even now, of course, I was frightened of talking to people. I had no self-confidence when it came to making contact with people. But being alone with Shogun and Yua haunted me down. But being alone while Shogun and Yua hunted me down made me feel far more insecure and scared and forlorn. Don't know why I struggled with that. It just didn't seem like it was right, but no, it was. I wanted someone to stay with me. They didn't they didn't have to be kind to me. I just wanted to be in a place with other people. Those words held no malice, nor any reluctance. Her shy gaze suddenly tilted up toward the sky. What was she constantly looking at with such distant eyes?
なのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
That was almost like being boyfriend and girlfriend. I was stupefied. Was she talking seriously? Yeah, her face certainly seemed to say so.
どうしてそこまでしてくれるの？
それは
Because there's definitely a flag standing here, right? It wouldn't be weird for her to say, because I love you in this situation, right? Not that I could think of a single reason why Rimi would fall for me. No, wait. This was Zhuge Liang's trap. Something similar had happened in the past. You had fooled me, driving me to the brink of despair. That's why I can't afford to expect too much. Start by re-envisioning the worst-case scenario. Rimi too might be my... Without warning, she saluted me. The suddenness of her action left me shaken, making me think in astonishment that maybe she was about to reveal her true nature. But her face still wore the same endlessly soft smile.
そんなの友達だからに決まってるでしょ。私にしてみればタクを助けてあげるのは当然なの。どうしてとか寂しいこと言わない。わかった？
If it were as a couple, I might have felt like my life had finally begun for real. But even if we were just friends, it made me feel incredibly happy. Having another person be nice to me, having another person try to do something for my sake without seeking anything in return, I'd never known it would bring me such joy. It might be the first time I'd ever felt like this, and more than anything, she made me believe I wasn't alone. Rimi's existence had saved me. My nausea had finally settled down, and I felt considerably lighter, or considerably better. What Rimi held out to me was a vermilion, floral-scented handkerchief. I accepted it meekly, but I hesitated to use it.
汚しちゃっていいよ。タクにあげる。
ありがとう。
I felt bad about it, but I decided that I might as well accept her generosity. I wiped the edges of my bile-soiled mouth. It was the first time I'd received a present from a girl outside my family, although I wasn't sure whether or not I would call this a gift. Because I had felt as if I were all alone in the world, even a little thing like this induced the same gratitude in me as something far more precious. My happiness and relief threatened to make tears spill out again.
それじゃあ帰ろっか。
Rimi asked me in a carefree voice.
一緒に。
Apparently, we'll leave school together, her suggestion from before, was already a done deal. Though I hadn't given her an answer yet. Not that I had any intention of refusing. I was frightened of being alone. I didn't want to be by myself. Right now, Rimi was the only person I could lean on. Oh, the music's finally done. That said, I couldn't relax simply because Rimi was going to walk me home. I picked up a different route from usual on the way back and proceeded cautiously, trembling all the while. Every shadow seemed to hold danger. I was tormented by the delusion that your Shogun might be around the corner each time I approached an intersection, and my leg would go weak, halting my progress. At such times, Rimi would go ahead and scout out the road beyond the intersection, then turn back and nod at me.
大丈夫。誰もいないよ。
Relieved, I followed after her. Rimi went along with me without a single grimace.
ねえ、聞いていいかな。一体何があったの？
I was a little torn over whether or not to tell her about it. If I had told her, and if she too ended up being targeted by Shogun, it'd be my fault for getting her involved.
話したくないなら無理に話さなくても。
Okay, I think I'm gonna find a decent stopping point. I was actually expecting this delusion to not go for as long as it has.
いや、話すよ。
My mouth had already started moving. I definitely didn't want to get her caught up in it, but if I didn't explain anything, Remy wouldn't understand the gravity of my position. For my own sake, I ultimately chose to close my eyes to the potential danger to Remy. She'd been the one to say she'd stay with me, so it's not like I was doing anything wrong. The fact that Shogun was the true new-gen criminal, the fact that Yua was his underling, the fact that they were targeting me. What had happened in front of the 107 building? I summarized everything, stuttering all the while. When I spoke of how Shogun had appeared in front of me, riding his wheelchair, Remy made a somber face and lapsed into thought. I'd been thinking I wanted to ask her about that incident. This was the ideal opportunity to do so. There was so little confidence in her answer. Remy scrunched up her eyebrows as if she didn't want to say it. That was how it must have appeared to Remy at the time. If possible, I'd wanted her to agree with me, but Remy and I, out of one of the two spectacles we viewed, whose was correct? Was I mistaken after all? Had that empty Shibuya been a delusion of mine? But that created a slight problem. The elderly wheelchair-bound man who had appeared in the depopulated Shibuya, Shogun. How was I supposed to explain him? If the depopulation had been delusionary, Shogun would have to be delusion as well. At the very least, Shogun wasn't a figment of my imagination. At first, I thought he was delusion, but my understanding of the situation had flipped 180 degrees upon the emergence of the group dive video. Shogun was real. Shogun existed. But maybe the empty Shibuya part of it had been imaginary. Even then, the area around the station had been overflowing with people, and I alone had viewed a different kind of scenery. What? How could that be? Remy pressed her hands together in supplication. Truthfully, I wanted to go home to my base this very instant. I'd come here, taken the long way, because I'd been considering the possibility that Yua and Shogun were lurking somewhere, not because I wanted to shop. Except, if I turned her down here, it might damage Remy's mood, and she was the one who said said she would be there for me if I screwed up. She could get angry and go back by herself. That'd be problematic. I need to have Remy with me. On my own, I wasn't even sure that I could make it back to my base. In the end, I found myself unable to refuse her. All I could do was haltingly tag along after her. Perhaps it would be ordinary to think that surely even someone like Yua wouldn't launch an attack on me with this many people around. But my fear that they were hiding somewhere nearby, blending in with the rest of the crowd, far surpassed that. I shrieked internally each time I came close to bumping shoulders with the people passing me by. Remy's words gave me a start. I quickly hid behind her. Just as she'd said, 2 police cars were parked in the street, and nearby them stood 3 uniformed officers. If there's 2 cars, why is there 3 officers? The police too were chasing me. I was obviously innocent, but the incompetent police couldn't grasp that. Were those policemen searching for me too? Or so I thought, but apparently that wasn't the case. Their lines of sight rested on the vast quantities of people who traversed the road as though they owned it. Who were those people protesters? Or whatever. It's not who, it's were. They came equipped with various standard issue items, from banners to posters with messages on them to forehead bands. I bit my lip upon seeing a child tripping along, pulled by the hand of his parents, with "Whose eyes are those eyes?" written menacingly in marker on the front of his t-shirt.
何のデモだろうね。
They're making a variety of, there were a variety of marchers, young and old, male and female alike. They paraded solemnly along, but once in a while they'd cry out in unison, "Drive the demons out of Shibuya."
悪魔。
Many of the protesters were inscribed with messages like, "Drive the demons away from our city, protect Shibuya from terrorists." This had to be a show of resistance against the new gen incidents. There was no point in demonstrating about it. If you've got that much free time on your hands, find and kill Shogun. That way all my worries will vanish.
タク、行こう。
Disinterested, Rimi shifted her gaze away from the demonstrators and began walking toward the entrance to a CD shop. As soon as we came in the store, Rimi went straight for the indie music corner. Unlike the J-pop corner, there were too many customers in the vicinity. Rimi stopped in front of the P shelf and began searching for the CD she had in mind, but her shoulders soon sagged.
やっぱりないな。
An indie group whose name began with P. Could it be?
タクはファンタズムってバンドを知ってる？今話題になってるけど。
As I'd guessed, there's no way I wouldn't know, and I'd been to one of their concerts and I owned their CD. Rimi smiled ruefully when I nodded.
私、そういう情報は結構疎くて、最近になって知ったんだ。それで友達に借りようかと思ったんだけど、なかなか手に入らないらしくて、誰も持ってないんだよ。だから CD 買うしかないかなって思って、ここ1週間ぐらいあちこち探してみたんだけど、どこも売り切れ中。
And I ended up skipping, I think, just the last little bit of the previous sentence. Because, yet again, I thought they were done.
次はいつ入るんだろう。
僕持ってる。
Okay, I heard what sounded like one word, but I guess what sounded like one word really means both of those. Rumi's eyes went round.
持ってるって CD？
Well, we have a CD from that band. For all we know, they might have multiple albums released. So, it depends on specifically which album you're looking for, of course, but that's just, of course, assuming they have multiple. If they only got one, then of course we have it. But if they have multiples, then we have one of them. I nodded, and Rimi. Okay, we're gonna go green again, because it's all part of the same delusion. I don't see a reason to go red all of a sudden, so let's stick with green. And then I'm gonna end the episode once we click green here. So she placed her hands on her shoulders. I'm gonna go to the next line real quick. Her sudden closeness flustered me. And this is where we're gonna save. I will admit, probably would have been better to actually save before we selected, but screw it. So, this is where we're gonna go from. So that's the... Excuse me. That is the end of this episode. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. But until then, goodbye, and farewell.